I got a lot of heat in the comments after my video yesterday for being too negative. Yes, we made it through to the fourth round of the League Cup. I get that. And those of you who watch my videos regularly will know that in general, I'm a pretty glass half full, positive Tottenham Hotspur fan. But I also reserve my right to be pissed off sometimes. And yesterday, as was clear, I was. Mainly because Big Ange, who I love, by the way, came out in the press saying how he always wins trophies in his second season and explained that he knew how important silverware is to the Tottenham fan base. But then he picked a team against Coventry that frankly, in my opinion, begged to be beaten. And in the end, very nearly was. And that was against a team lying 13th in the Championship who made 7 changes of their own. That's why I was annoyed. It doesn't mean I think Anne should go. It doesn't mean I don't believe in this project. It just means that I was angry at the sloppiness of it. For me, he could have started his strongest team, hopefully got a few goals up, and then rested 5 of them or so for the second half. Anyway, I just felt like I wanted to start with that because, like I said, a lot of you felt that I was far too negative and that maybe I was, showing my true colours or something like that. But no, like I said, I'm pretty positive about Spurs in general. I'm glass half full, and I think Ange Postecoglou is the right man. I love the football that he's trying to get us playing, but I just think in terms of what he said in the press compared to what he then picked for the first team on Wednesday night, it didn't ring true. And I do start to worry sometimes that maybe some of the stuff that Ange says in the press is just paying lip service to these press conferences rather than telling us the truth, which I know a lot of managers don't always tell the truth in press conferences. I get that. But the thing with Big Ange is he always says that he is, a slave to the truth. He says, I'm not going to lie to you, mate, all the time. Well, don't tell me then that you are all about trophies and you know how the fans feel about it and then pick that side that, like I said, begged to be beaten. That's why I was annoyed, and I reserve my right to be annoyed on these videos. But I do appreciate you all getting in the comments, and your opinions are absolutely valid too. It's totally subjective, and I don't have any problems with that. I just wanted to say today that is why I think I was so wound up after that Carabao Cup third round victory. And like I said, it was a victory. We're through to the next round for the first time in about 3-4 years. And who knows, a good home draw, and hopefully we can push on to the quarterfinals and beyond. Let's get on with some other Tottenham news and then into the Premier League news, a wider ranging Premier League news as well, starting with the fact that apparently, again, according to more reports, Tottenham, Newcastle and Manchester United are all chasing Lille and now England central midfielder Angel Gomez. The 24-year-old, as I'm sure you all know, out of contract in the summer. He got sent off actually in the Champions League this week, but he's looked really good for Lille over the last couple of years and did not look out of place in those England games under Lee Carsley. And well, as we know with Daniel Levy and Tottenham, always sniffing around a freebie, and Angel Gomez could be a good option. Meanwhile, also more reports that Spurs, Chelsea and PSG are still interested in Swedish striker Victor Gyökeres. Sporting Lisbon came out just last week, didn't they? Their CEO or sporting director came out and said he's seen inferior players go for more than 100 million euros. Well, I think we know if it gets to around 100 million euros, then Tottenham are not going to be interested. However, it says to me that Tottenham are still not totally sure on Richarlison, and they're definitely still waiting for Dominic Solanke to open his account. Let's hope that Dominic can get a goal this weekend against Brentford. I will be doing my match preview for the Brentford game later in this episode, by the way. But I like what Solanke's doing so far. I like the runs he's making. I love his hold-up play. He was great against Arsenal with his back to goal, but we just need to make him more chances. They've clearly been watching Gyökeres for a long time, though, and maybe if Richarlison were to go in the January or in the summer, maybe to Saudi, then they'd look to invest some of that money again. Let's see what happens. Brennan Johnson, who of course scored the winner against Coventry and just had a terrible week before that, having been abused so much after the Arsenal game. He's given some quotes about that winning goal against Coventry. He said, "It was my first goal of the season, which I would have liked to have come a bit earlier, but I think scoring like this right at the end, it's important and of course positive for the team." He was also asked about the chaotic nature of Spurs' display against Coventry. He said, "It was a bit too chaotic. We gave the ball away too many times. We weren't much of a threat. For most of the game, we didn't play forward enough. The goals came from quick play, and that's what we want to do more often." Well, I completely agree with that, and I do wonder whether that's something that was drummed into him and the rest of the squad by Ange Postecoglou after the game. There was a little bit of just taking it a bit too easy. Postecoglou is all about tempo and always about playing forward. Don't forget those times we've seen Postecoglou on the touchline screaming, forward, forward, forward. There wasn't much of that screaming on Wednesday night, was there? Postecoglou just looked a little bit resigned on the sidelines. And it seemed to me that maybe after the game, maybe he went into that changing room and reminded them of their responsibilities of going forward, playing forward and being on the front foot. Because there wasn't much of that. It was more kind of sideways and backwards passing and not much bravery, in my opinion. Jed Spence, who also scored one of the goals, he said this after the game. He said, "I'm happy to be in the plans. I'm happy to keep moving forward with the team. Hopefully we can keep winning and we can go from there. I've just got to stay ready and be ready for whenever I'm called upon, like today." He also spoke about scoring his first Spurs goal. He said it meant a lot. It was a good feeling to get the team back in the game and then especially to push on and get the win. Now, is it just me, guys? Let me know what you think in the comments. Or is it looking like a bit of a bad decision to leave Jed Spence out of that Europa League squad? They can change that squad in January. But at the moment, it looks like maybe he should have kept Jed Spence in that squad as backup for Porro and for Destiny Udogie. But maybe that means, I don't know, let me know what you think in the comments. Could that mean that Jed Spence will get more minutes in the Premier League? I do hope so. He looks decent on the ball, makes the right runs, and he was certainly the only fullback really making that run straight down the middle into the box that led to that equaliser the other night. Meanwhile, Fabrizio Romano has come out and given an update on where he thinks Christian Romero is at in terms of his contract. He says he continues to be an important player for Tottenham, and so it's perhaps normal that we're starting to see rumours about interest from other top clubs, with some fans asking me if there's anything to the links with Real Madrid. However, I'm told that nothing is happening now. Romero's contract could be a topic in the next months as Spurs, of course, want to keep him for the long term, but no active talks have started yet. I saw an interesting social media video this morning, actually. I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about it, or what you think about the idea of it. Sorry, the social media video that I saw was someone just saying, get me back to when Christian Romero was a little bit unhinged, basically, and then showed video of him flying into tackles like he did, kind of up to maybe that Chelsea game where he got sent off 10 games into last season. And is it fair to say that maybe he's calmed down a little bit there and since then? And if that's the case, is that kind of maybe leading to him losing his concentration a bit more? Maybe he's not quite on the edge, and maybe Romero needs to be one of those players who lives life on the edge all the time to keep his concentration up. If that is the case, would you want Romero to be back at his kind of almost dangerous levels of flying into 50-50 challenges and arriving late for some challenges as well, if that means he's going to keep his levels of concentration up? Because he has been responsible for a couple of goals at least already this season, so maybe we need him more on the edge than he has been. Maybe kind of similar to Dele Alli back in the day. Do you remember that Dele Alli was a little bit dangerous in his first few years? He was always on the edge. He had a little bit of bite in him. And then he was told by everyone, including the press, that he had to calm down. And that kind of almost, I feel like that lost him a bit of edge and led to, was certainly part of his decline after that. I wouldn't want the same to happen to Christian Romero. So part of me is just like, let's get Romero on the front foot again. And maybe that'll help lead all of the others to be on the front foot as well. And win more of those 50-50s and second balls. Just a slight more bit of Spurs news. Will Lancashire has apparently returned to training this week after recovering from a hamstring injury. So it'll be interesting to see whether we see him on the bench sometime soon, especially while Richarlison is still out. Okay, I'm going to get into my Tottenham versus Brentford match preview. 3 o'clock kickoff tomorrow afternoon. That's Saturday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The form of the two clubs is as follows. Spurs have won 1, drawn 1, lost 2. Our worst start to the season since 2015-16, when we did then go on, though, to really turn it around. Something clicked under Pochettino, and we challenged Leicester and Arsenal for that title. But really, it was us or Leicester till the last game, when we inexplicably lost 4-0, or 4-1, was it, at St James's Park against Newcastle. Our last game, of course, was the North London derby at home to Arsenal, which we lost 1-0. Brentford have won 2, lost 2. Their last game was away at Man City, where they lost 2-1. But for any of you that didn't see that game, Brentford absolutely dominated Man City in the first 15-20 minutes. I know there's some kind of rumour that Man City, whenever they've just come back from an international break, are always a bit tired, and Brentford really pushed them early on. So be interesting to see at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium whether Brentford really push us early doors as well. actually, and I'll be going in later in this report, in this preview, I'll be going into what happened in last year's home game against Brentford, and that's exactly what they did. So in the league table at the moment, Spurs currently 13th after 4 games, Brentford 9th. The overall history of the matches between the two clubs, in total, Tottenham have won 25 of 48 matches. Brentford have only won 7, with 16 draws. In terms of the Premier League, Spurs have 3 wins, Brentford 1 win and 3 draws. Our last 7 results versus Brentford are as follows. We won 3-2 at home last season, drew 2-2 away, which was on the first game of last season, Big Ange's first game in charge of Spurs. Previous season, we lost 3-1 at home. If memory serves, that was a game where Ryan Mason had just come back in as interim manager again. We started that game well, trying to play some good football. And it was, I think, if I'm right, and tell me if I'm wrong, was that not the game where Harry Kane scored from the free kick, where it was just tapped to him and he laced it into the top corner? One of the very few free kick goals that Harry Kane ever scored for us. But then we let Brentford back in and they got 3 goals. Before that, we drew 2-2 away and 0-0 away, the previous 2 away games. And the previous 2 home games to that, we won both 2-0. Some notable stats for this fixture: 65% of all games between Tottenham Hotspur and Brentford have had over 2.5 goals in them. 90% of the games have had over 1.5 goals in them, so you'd expect goals. 75% of these games have had both teams scoring in, and it averages 3 goals per game, which is in comparison to a Premier League average of 2.65. So definitely a game above the mean in terms of goals scored. Our games against Brentford have had 43% clean sheets for Tottenham, with only 14% clean sheets for Brentford. During this week, both teams came from behind in the EFL Cup against lower league opposition. Brentford beat Leyton Orient 3-1 and are into the next round. And in fact, the draw for the next round takes place next week, and I'd be pretty keen to avoid Brentford, to be fair. So team news. For Spurs, Odegaard, Richarlison and Werner likely to be out. Bissouma doubtful. I'm recording this at about 1:30 on Friday afternoon. And I think Ange is in the press conference right now. So by the time you've watched this, you'll probably know whether Bissouma has a chance of making this game. Ange did say last week that he hopes Bissouma might be able to play some part in it. Meanwhile, Brentford have a few injuries, actually. Wissa is out after a big injury against Man City last week. He'll be missed. He's out for a couple of months. De Silva, Nunes, Jensen, Thiago, Hickey and Rico Henry all out. So I don't know. Let's hope Tottenham can take advantage of that. Although Brentford, so well coached under Thomas Frank, all of their squad know exactly how to play. Predicted team for Spurs: Vicario, Porro, Udogie, Romero, Van de Ven, Bentancur, and I expect Kulusevski and Maddison to start again as the 2 8/10s in central midfield, with Son on the left, Solanke on in the middle, and Brennan Johnson, hopefully with a bit more confidence, having scored the winner against Coventry in the week, starting on the right-hand side. Predicted Brentford team: Flecken, Ayer, Collins, Pinnock, Vandenberg, Lewis, Potter, Janelt, Norgard, Carvalho, Mbeumo, and Schade. I think we've got to keep an eye on Mbeumo and Norgard, who I rate and is getting more minutes now for Brentford than he has done in previous seasons. As I mentioned, talking about last year's game at home, it was a 3-2 victory. But if you remember, Brentford went 1-0 up from a classic transition. We lost it in midfield. Ivan Toney was clean through and was allowed to get so close, only about 9 yards out from an angle from the right. Has a shot, well saved from Vicario, but as it comes out from him, Neil Maupay swept it in from the rebound ahead of Christian Romero. He then, if you remember, did his dart celebration, which really wound up James Maddison. And in fact, Spurs were very poor in that first half. And it did not look like Tottenham were likely to get back in the game. However, just a couple of minutes into the second half, and over the next 7 minutes, Tottenham scored 3 goals. The equaliser was Destiny Udogie, putting it in from the left-hand side of the box. And then we went 2-1 up from a run down the left from Timo Werner, who made a yard on his fullback and got the ball across the box to Brennan Johnson on the far right, coming in from the right-hand side. And then and Johnson had only just come off the bench, by the way. And then 3-1, all 3 goals, like I said, scored in those 7 minutes. Richarlison swept home after Maddison did some good work in a tight space in the box, got a shot away. It was saved, and it was blocked, and then Richarlison swept it home. And then late in the game, Brentford made it 3-2 when Destiny Udogie completely inexplicably tried to pass it back to Vicario without knowing Toney was there, just on the edge of the box. And Toney had an easy one-on-one to just put it into the bottom corner, and it was a nerve-wracking last few minutes of that game. In terms of the dangers that I see coming from this game, and there are numerous set pieces, of course. There's been a lot of talk in the press about set pieces this week after the Arsenal game. Vicario is going to need to show more strength, and we're going to need to keep pushing players and blockers away from him. Thomas Frank's tactical acumen, he will have spent all week trying to find an answer to playing against Big Ange Postecoglou. And like I said, last year's games, he did pretty well at that, certainly in the first half at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, so I'd expect the same thing. They've got pace on the counter-attack, which we always struggle against, and I think there's a little bit of an element tomorrow with the form of the club, of the team not being that good, that maybe there will be a bit of a bad atmosphere within the ground. I don't mean like fully negative, but I think they'll be needing to be impressed, the fans in the ground tomorrow, and I think that is a danger for us, potentially of fans groaning if passes go astray or if we don't make the most of some good opportunities in the final third, and I think that is because of a lack of confidence amongst the fans, which I think is being led by a lack of confidence amongst the squad at the moment. As a result, my prediction, let me know what your prediction is in the comments below, but my prediction is 2-2. I'm going with a draw. If I was going to bet on it, I'd say that the goals would be scored by Heung-min Son and Brennan Johnson, but let me know what you think in the comments box below. Am I being too negative, suggesting it might well be a draw? Before I get into the other Premier League news doing the rounds at the moment, please guys do press that like button, do press subscribe if you haven't already, and become a member. Only £1 a month, all the details of how in the description box below. But let's start at Old Trafford. United apparently willing to offer a new contract to England international Kobbie Mainoo, still only 19 years old, and that is to reflect his status as a fixture of the first team. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. Meanwhile, United could move for Bayern Munich's Germany midfielder Leon Goretzka, with the futures of Christian Eriksen and Casemiro both in doubt. Liverpool, meanwhile, are looking at potential replacements for Virgil van Dijk, whose contract runs out at the end of this season, and they are apparently looking at Juventus and Brazil centre-back Gleison Bremer, 27 years old, and they are scouting him to see whether he has what it takes to replace Van Dijk, but it will not be easy to replace him. Liverpool also apparently monitoring Hungary left-back Milos Kerkez, 20 years old. He plays, of course, at Bournemouth. At Man City, some news that came out this last couple of days that there's some talk that City could be expelled from all competitions, not just the Premier League, if they're found guilty of serious breaches of its financial rules. That seems a little bit like scaremongering to me. I just cannot see a club the size of City with the money that they've got to pay for all the lawyers really getting such a terrible guilty verdict. But let's face it, it would be funny. Meanwhile, they're eager apparently to start contract talks with their goalkeeper Ederson, as his contract is due to end in summer 2026. Over to Newcastle, they're monitoring the Norgesland and Norway forward Sindre Wally Egali, dubbed the next Erling Haaland apparently. And that is with West Ham, Crystal Palace, Brighton and Brentford also interested in the teenager. He is apparently rated at £25 million. Over to Chelsea, Bayer Leverkusen's Dutch wing-back Jeremy Frimpong, 23 years old. He is on a 5-man shortlist apparently to replace their English fullback Reece James, who, let's face it, cannot get on the pitch at all at the moment because of injuries. So they're looking for someone more for the long term, and I guess they'll be looking to sell Reece James because of his injury record, but also because it would work out as pure profit, and therefore they'd be able to make all that money straight away, put it into their coffers, and spend it again probably on 6,000 18-year-olds from Brazil. Speaking of which, Chelsea will not loan out their 17-year-old winger Estevão Willian when he joins from Palmeiras next summer. They're going to keep him in with the first team apparently. And over to Arsenal, Inter Milan apparently want to sign Arsenal and Japanese defender Takahiro Tomiyasu in January, with Arsenal asking for £25 million for their 25-year-old defender. Okay, guys, that's been the end of another long edition and long week of Tottenham Hotspur news and Premier League news. Let me know in the comments, especially, like I said, about my negativity towards that Coventry game. It wasn't that I don't expect us... It wasn't that I can't imagine us playing badly. That's not what it is. It's that Ange says one thing in the press conference and then sets up a team in a completely opposite way. And it's contradictory and it's confusing. And I think if it's confusing to me and the fan base, then surely it's confusing to the team and the squad as well. So let me know if I'm completely wrong. Let me know if you think I've severely misjudged that, and I've been completely unfair. And if you agree, if you think that's the case, that's absolutely fine. I love getting your comments and talking to you guys in that comment section. Please do give this video a like if you haven't already. Press subscribe. Press the bell button as well, then you get a notification whenever I deliver my daily content. And become a member, only £1 a month. All the details in the description box below. And also, listen to this on the audio podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Just type in the Spurred On podcast and you'll find me there. Have a great weekend, guys. And of course, come on you Spurs.